Hi everyone! This third lesson, New Eras, will introduce you to some of the more modern tools of secret communication. In this lesson, you will learn about the era of cipher machines and modern cryptography, both secret key and public key. The early 20th century brought change into the field of secret communication with the invention of electromechanical ciphering machines. These machines were relatively compact, portable, and could instantaneously perform much more complex transformations of the plaintext than a human could do by hand. The most famous cipher machine, the Enigma, was used to encrypt diplomatic, military, and commercial communications since the 1920s. During World War II, Enigma was extensively employed by all branches of Nazi Germany military to communicate commands and targets, to inform troops about enemy dispositions and plan strategies. Another significant one, the Lorenz cipher machine, was mostly used by the High Command of Nazi Germany. A variety of similar machines of different complexity were produced by other states and companies as well. Ciphering machines in general had the size and the appearance of a typewriter and were usually operated by one or two people. One person would type in the plaintext message, and the other would write down the letters that lit up above the keyboard. Each letter key press triggered a set of rotors, 3 in the early Enigma and up to 8 in later versions, to rotate a certain number of places and output a different letter, scrambling the plaintext, as you can see on this diagram. An operator on the receiving side would have to type the ciphertext back into a machine set up with the identical position of rotors and write down the letters that lit up in order to decrypt it. The key to encryption and decryption was the initial positions of the rotors. The rotor setting sheets for the months were distributed by couriers to all the users of a network, and every day each operator would assemble the rotors to the given position and destroy the setting record. Cipher machines have greatly stepped up the cryptography game, specifically cryptanalysis. Cryptanalysis is the study of various techniques for attempting to defeat cryptographic techniques and more general information security. Before the 20th century, the complexity of encryption was limited by computational capacity of a human brain, and it was another human brain that had to analyze and break it. For comparison, the Caesar cipher only has 26 possible key values, which are easy to try out one by one until you find the correct one. Like in this case, it would be attack at dawn. A basic 3-rotor Enigma has 26 possible rotor states for each rotor and 6 wheel orders, given a substantial number of rotor settings. In the 1930s, Polish intelligence employed a group of mathematicians to do cryptanalysis of German military traffic. With some brilliant deduction and scrupulosity, they were able to successfully decipher 3/4 of intercepted German Enigma encrypted transmissions up until 1938. During World War II, however, the stakes were higher than ever. The Axis powers encrypted substantial amounts of their communications with more advanced versions of Enigma, for which the existing analyses have no longer worked. The most advanced model had up to 8 rotors and a plugboard in the front where 10 pairs of letters could be connected with wires to further complicate the plaintext scrambling. The use of a plugboard further increased the number of possible initial settings by 150 trillion. At this point, the quantitative effort required to find the correct settings has tremendously exceeded anything created before, as well as human capabilities. With the beginning of the war, Polish intelligence shared their previous work with the Allies, who too assigned their smartest people, including Alan Turing, to cryptanalysis and stationed them in the now famous Bletchley Park near London. Analytical efforts resulted in the creation of specialized machines to do cryptanalysis of ciphering machines. The impact of being able to reliably decipher German encrypted traffic is said to have turned the tides for the Allies and shortening the war by a few years. Sadly, most breakthroughs and the achievements of the enormous cryptanalytical work conducted there have remained classified until the 1990s, potentially slowing down the development of the field of information security by decades. Fortunately, by now, most of the relevant documents have been declassified. available for others to study and pay tribute to the people involved and their hard work during those dark times. Those were the times when cryptography and cryptanalysis not only directly impacted millions of lives for the first time in history, but also the technological development of humanity in general. The Colossus, developed for the cryptanalysis of the Lorenz cipher machine that encrypted messages of Nazi Germany Army command, is regarded as one of the first programmable electronic computers ever made. It used vacuum tubes and could perform logical and counting operations programmed by switches and plugs. The subsequent development of computers has removed algorithm complexity limitations imposed by a computational capacity of humans and electromechanical devices. Computers have introduced new opportunities for the design and logical operation of cryptographic algorithms and established stronger requirements for the security of the algorithms. At the same time, the growing availability of electronics and digital communication systems has raised the demand from private, significantly banking sector, for information security services and has influenced cryptographic practices to adapt to the changing world of communication. The 70s brought at least two immensely radical ideas into cryptography. First, the time had come for there to be a non-military encryption standard for private sector sensitive traffic. The National Bureau of Standards made a call to non-governmental institutions, which resulted in a cipher proposed by Horst Feistel and IBM, being published in 1977 as Data Encryption Standard. DES became the first modern, publicly available cryptographic standard. This unprecedented event spawned research in information security and academic circles, de facto establishing cryptography as a mathematical discipline. People outside of military intelligence started to study the details of the design and how that affects security, potential ways to weaken and strengthen it, formalizing models of evaluating security of algorithms in general. This process ultimately resulted in complete transformation of cryptography from a military technology to a worldwide public technology. DES is a symmetric block cipher. It uses one key for encryption and decryption and splits big plaintext into blocks of 64 bits to process arbitrarily long data. DES was the workhorse of civilian cryptography for the next several decades. As the only standard available, DES was used whenever encryption was needed until it was superseded by AES, the Advanced Encryption Standard, in 2001. The second radical idea from the same time was that encryption and decryption do not necessarily have to use the same single key. Having to share a secret key without personal contact and without anyone malicious intercepting it has always been a bottleneck, and even more so in a digital era where businesses without face-to-face interaction was becoming a new normal. Asymmetric cryptography, also known as public key cryptography, was introduced to address this issue. The ideas behind it are credited to Ralph Merkle, first published by Martin Hellman and Wilfred Diffie in 1976, and the first public key system, the RSA, was implemented by Ronald Rivest, Adi Shamir, and Leonard Adleman in 1977. The British Signals Intelligence Agency had developed a similar system several years earlier, but it remained classified until the late 90s. The fact that public institutions came up with the same concept independently has sealed the future of cryptography as a public domain and proved once again that keeping cryptographic algorithms secret only sets the world back. The next big chapter in the history of cryptography, which cannot be underestimated, is of course the Internet. Today, people are used to most of their communications to the web being secure, but that was not always the case. In fact, HTTP, the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, the foundation of data communication over the World Wide Web, is plain text. That means all of the data in HTTP requests and responses is sent on the clear, under a risk of all sorts of intrusions and fraud. Providing security of communication over computer networks is the continuing challenge in the modern world. With the rise of the Internet, cryptography is not only employed in securing communication, but also influences all sorts of daily businesses. Like when in the 70s cryptography allowed for remote banking in ATMs, in the 2010s it has again influenced the financial sector by means of cryptocurrencies. Cryptography has grown to be not only about encryption anymore, but includes a group of special-purpose algorithms to sustain the wider infrastructure information security, such as user and message authentication, protection from illegitimate changes to messages, eavesdropping, etc. It is in this last 50 years that cryptography has turned into a science, the workings of which you will study in this course. In the next lessons, you will learn about fundamental cryptographic techniques we took from history into this day.